David stood outside the grand glass doors of the Regal Heights Hotel, clutching the hand of his young son, Michael. The towering building gleamed under the afternoon sun, promising comfort and rest after a long day of travel. For David, this hotel was more than just a place to stay. It was a symbol of progress, a small victory for a man who had fought every day to build a better life for his boy. He adjusted the straps on Michael's little backpack and smiled down at him. "Almost there, buddy. Just one more step, and we're home for the night." Michael beamed back, his eyes wide with excitement. This trip was supposed to be a special one. David had saved up for months so they could attend a conference downtown, an event that could open doors for David's career and, hopefully, bring them some stability. The hotel had been booked well in advance, and the reservation was under David's name. But as they approached the front desk, David's smile began to fade. The clerk barely glanced up. "Name, David Harris. I have a reservation," he said calmly, sliding the confirmation email across the counter. The clerk's eyes flickered to Michael and then back to David, a brief hesitation in his expression. "I am sorry, sir. We don't have a room available for you tonight." David blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I booked this room 2 weeks ago." "It's confirmed." The clerk's tone grew colder. "I am afraid there's nothing I can do." Michael tugged at David's sleeve, sensing his father's growing frustration. "Dad, what's wrong?" David forced a smile. "Nothing, champ. Just a little mix-up. Let me talk to the manager." He stepped aside and called the manager over, hoping to clear the confusion quickly. But the manager's expression was distant and dismissive. David felt the weight of the words before he fully understood their meaning. This wasn't a mistake. This was discrimination. That moment changed everything. Despite the shock, David refused to let the injustice break him. He knew he had to fight not just for himself and Michael, but for every person who had ever been judged unfairly because of their skin color. With every ounce of strength, he made a decision that would turn the tables on those who tried to deny him his dignity. This is the story of how one man's courage shone through the darkest moments, and how a single act changed the course of his life forever. David stood firm near the front desk, his voice steady but insistent. "I don't understand. I made this reservation weeks ago, and I confirmed it twice over the phone. Why won't you give me my room?" The clerk barely looked at him, her expression cold and dismissive. "Sir, the hotel is fully booked. We have no available rooms tonight." David glanced down at Michael, who clung to his leg, eyes wide and confused. The little boy's innocence made David's heart ache even more. How could anyone treat them like this, just because they looked different? "Please," David continued, "this isn't right. I have a right to stay here. I paid for this room. Policies are policies," the clerk said flatly, "and we follow them strictly." David took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. He asked to speak to the manager, hoping for some explanation, some solution. But when the manager arrived, the same coldness greeted him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harris," the manager said with a slight shrug, "but there's nothing we can do. We simply can't accommodate you." David's mind raced. Was this about his race, his clothes, his son's presence? He couldn't be sure, but the way the staff avoided eye contact told a story of its own. That night, after leaving the hotel without a room, David sat with Michael on a park bench under the dim glow of a street lamp. The cool breeze ruffled Michael's hair as the boy looked up at his father. "Dad, why won't they let us stay there?" Michael's voice was small, innocent. David forced a smile. "Sometimes people make mistakes, buddy, but we'll find a way." He pulled out his phone and started documenting everything: photos of the hotel entrance, screenshots of the reservation emails, recordings of conversations with staff and management. David knew he needed proof if he wanted to fight back. The next day, David reached out to the hotel's corporate office, sending a detailed complaint with all his evidence attached. The reply came swiftly, but it was nothing but vague apologies and excuses. They denied any wrongdoing, claiming miscommunication and booking errors. Feeling the walls close in, David turned to his friends and family. His sister Tanya was one of his strongest supporters. "You can't just let this go, David. They need to know what they did was wrong." Together, they strategized. Tanya helped connect David with a local civil rights lawyer, Miss Anderson, known for her work against discrimination. The lawyer agreed to take the case pro bono after hearing David's story. Meanwhile, David and Michael grew closer through this ordeal. Evenings that once felt heavy with stress turned into moments of bonding. They cooked dinner together, shared stories, and played board games by candlelight when the hotel had refused to provide even the smallest comfort. Michael's laughter became a balm for David's weary soul, reminding him of what he was fighting for, a better future, not only for himself but for his son. As David prepared for the legal battle ahead, he stayed determined. His quiet dignity in the face of injustice inspired those around him. The fight was far from over, but with each passing day, the spark of hope grew stronger. David spent the next morning pacing his small apartment, the weight of what happened still heavy on his chest. But instead of sinking into despair, he focused on what he could control. The phone rang. It was Miss Anderson, the civil rights lawyer. "Mr. Harris, I've reviewed your documents." Her voice was calm but resolute. "What happened to you is clear discrimination. We have a strong case, but we'll need to be meticulous. I want you to keep documenting everything, every call, every interaction." David nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Miss Anderson. I won't let this go." Back at the hotel, the staff were unaware their refusal had sparked something much bigger. David's story was quietly spreading on social media, shared by friends and strangers alike. The hashtag justice for David started trending locally, drawing attention to the issue of racial discrimination in the hospitality industry. One afternoon, as David and Michael sat in a local CAF, a stranger approached. "I saw your story online," she said softly. "My name's Carla. I'm a community organizer. If you need help reaching more people or legal advice, I'm here." David shook her hand gratefully. "Every bit helps." Despite the growing pressure, David made sure Michael's childhood wasn't stolen by this fight. On weekends, they visited the park, played catch, and read books about heroes who stood up against injustice. Michael loved hearing stories about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. "Dad," Michael said one day, "when I grow up, I want to help people too." David smiled, hugging his son close. "You already do, buddy." Meanwhile, Miss Anderson worked tirelessly, drafting letters to the hotel's corporate office, organizing meetings with local officials, and preparing for possible legal action. "David," she said one evening over coffee, "this is about more than just a hotel room. It's about changing a system that allows this kind of discrimination to happen." David's eyes burned with determination. "Then we fight to change it." At home, David recorded a video statement, sharing his experience with the world. His voice was steady but charged with emotion. "They refused me and my son a simple hotel room because of the color of my skin. But I'm not here to ask for pity. I'm here to demand justice. No one should be treated this way." The video went viral overnight. News outlets picked up the story. Interviews were scheduled, and David found himself a reluctant but powerful voice for those who often go unheard. Through the darkest nights and the long days, David and Michael stood together, two fighters united by love and hope. The morning sun streamed through the curtains of David's small apartment, but he felt anything but rested. Today was the day. After weeks of gathering evidence, rallying support, and preparing with Miss Anderson and community activists, David was ready to tell his story, not just for himself, but for anyone who had ever been silenced. He set up his phone, adjusting the camera for the live stream. Michael, still sleepy-eyed, sat beside him with a quiet determination that belied his young age. "Ready, Dad?" Michael asked softly. David smiled, squeezing his son's hand. More than ever, with a deep breath, David began speaking, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "Good morning, everyone. My name is David Harris. I want to share with you an experience that no one should ever face: the sting of discrimination in a place that's supposed to be a refuge. Recently, my son and I were denied a hotel room at the Regal Heights Hotel, a place I had booked and paid for weeks in advance. Because of the color of my skin, We were turned away. The comments began flooding in words of support, anger, solidarity. David felt the power of community as the live stream spread like wildfire. Across town, inside the glassy offices of the Regal Heights Hotel's management, panic was setting in. The company's PR team scrambled to contain the fallout. Calls poured in from news outlets demanding statements. Social media exploded with the hashtag boycott Regal Heights. The hotel's CEO, a man used to control and order, sat with his team. This could destroy us if we don't act fast. We need a statement, an apology. But not just words. They want action. His communications director nodded. We can offer a public apology, a settlement, and a commitment to diversity training. That should calm the storm. But David was not interested in quiet settlements or empty words. At a press conference organized with Miss Anderson and local activists, David stood tall before a crowd of reporters, hammers flashing, microphones thrust forward. "I'm not here for an apology," David declared. "I want change. I want every person, no matter their race, background, or circumstance, to be treated with dignity and respect. This isn't just about me. It's about justice, civil rights, and the basic human decency we all deserve." The crowd erupted in applause. The hotel issued a formal apology, but David refused to accept it without a clear plan for structural change. "I will not be silenced by empty promises," he told the press. "We demand transparency, accountability, and policies that ensure no one else faces what my son and I did." The community rallied behind him. Protests were organized outside the hotel. Local businesses joined in boycotts. Social media campaigns pushed for accountability. The city council announced an investigation into the hotel's discriminatory practices. Inside the hotel, changes were swift but painful. The front desk manager who had refused David was placed on leave pending review. The CEO faced tough questions in public hearings and was fined by the city for violating anti-discrimination laws. Through it all, David and Michael remained a symbol of resilience and hope. They had turned a moment of pain into a movement. The live stream had gone viral overnight. By midday, David's story was on every local news station, shared by thousands on social media. The hashtag boycott Regal Heights trended nationally, with celebrities and influencers lending their voices to the cause. People were outraged, not just about one man's treatment, but the deeper issue of racial discrimination still permeating everyday life. David sat in the small conference room arranged by the community group supporting him. Around him were activists, journalists, and Miss Anderson, the lawyer who had stood by his side since the beginning. "David, the pressure on the hotel is mounting," Miss Anderson said quietly. "They've released a statement apologizing for any misunderstanding and promising to review their policies, but it's vague. They haven't accepted responsibility yet." David shook his head austerely. "An apology isn't enough. They need to face consequences. They need to change." Meanwhile, at the Regal Heights Hotel headquarters, the CEO called an emergency meeting with senior staff. "This has gone beyond a simple customer service issue," he said grimly. "If we don't act decisively, our reputation and bottom line will be destroyed." The hotel's PR team presented a plan: issue a public apology acknowledging the discrimination, announce an internal investigation, implement mandatory anti-discrimination and sensitivity training for all staff, offer compensation to David and Michael, host a community forum to address racial justice. David was offered a meeting with the hotel's executives. The day arrived, tense and heavy with anticipation. Seated across the table from the CEO and several managers, David listened as they read from prepared statements. "We sincerely regret the incident, Mr. Harris," the CEO said. "We are committed to making things right." David leaned forward, voice firm. "Words are easy. Actions speak louder. I want an official acknowledgement that you discriminated against me and my son. I want your commitment in writing that your policies will change. And I want your staff who were involved held accountable." The room fell silent. The hotel's management hesitated, but under mounting public pressure and with the threat of legal action looming, they conceded. 2 days later, the hotel held a press conference. The CEO stood before a crowd of reporters, visibly tense. "We acknowledge the wrongful treatment of Mr. David Harris and his son at our establishment," he stated. "We apologize unreservedly and pledge to implement new policies to prevent such discrimination. The involved employees have been disciplined appropriately." The crowd erupted with questions, cameras flashing. David stood beside Miss Anderson, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. "This is a victory," David told the reporters, "but it is only the beginning. Real change comes from awareness, education, and accountability. I urge every business, every community to reflect and act against injustice." Community members gathered for a protest outside the hotel the next day. Signs read "Justice for David," "End racism now," and "No more silence." The energy was powerful, hopeful. Local officials joined the cause, promising investigations and harsher penalties for discrimination. The city's Human Rights Commission announced a formal inquiry into the hotel's practices, and soon after, the hotel was fined a substantial amount for violating anti-discrimination laws. In the weeks that followed, David became a local hero. Invitations for interviews, speaking engagements, and panel discussions poured in, but through it all, he remained grounded, always by Michael's side. One afternoon, Michael tugged at David's sleeve. "Dad," he said, "we did it. We made them listen." David smiled, hugging his son tightly. "Yes, buddy. Together, we made a difference." Days after the press conference, the pressure on Regal Heights Hotel only intensified. News outlets ran stories dissecting the incident, interviews with David, and expert commentary on racial discrimination in the hospitality industry. Social media campaigns coordinated protests and boycotts, urging customers to avoid the hotel chain until real reforms were enacted. David received messages from strangers across the country, sharing their own experiences of injustice, thanking him for speaking out. One evening, as he sat with Michael at the kitchen table, David scrolled through his phone. "Dad, look, they're talking about us on the news again." Michael's eyes sparkled with excitement. David smiled tiredly but warmly. "That means people are paying attention, son. That means change is possible." Meanwhile, city officials launched a formal investigation into the hotel's policies and past complaints. Regulators inspected documents, interviewed employees, and gathered evidence. The hotel's top management, feeling the heat, reluctantly agreed to cooperate fully. In a public hearing, the CEO was grilled by council members. "How do you justify the discrimination that happened under your watch?" One official demanded. The CEO's voice faltered. "We acknowledge our failures and are committed to rebuilding trust." Back in the community, activists and local leaders praised David's courage. At a packed town hall meeting, David was invited to speak. "My hope," he told the crowd, "is that this incident becomes a catalyst not just for me, but for all who have faced discrimination quietly. Justice means standing up and demanding respect and equality for everyone." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. In response to public outcry and legal pressure, the hotel announced a series of reforms: new mandatory anti-racism training for all employees, establishment of a diversity and inclusion task force, commitment to transparent reporting of discrimination complaints, a scholarship fund for minority students in hospitality management, sponsored by the hotel. As the dust began to settle, David felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also awareness of the long road ahead. One quiet evening, Michael hugged him tightly. "Dad, I'm proud of you. You're a hero." David's eyes glistened with tears. "No, son, we're heroes. Together." Months passed since the incident at Regal Heights Hotel. The story of David and Michael had become a beacon of hope and resilience in their city and beyond. David's fight was no longer just personal, it was part of a larger movement demanding justice and equality. A tier community center packed with supporters, activists, and local officials. David was invited to deliver a keynote speech at a ceremony celebrating progress in civil rights. Standing behind the podium, he looked out at the crowd, a sea of faces filled with hope, determination, and solidarity. I stand here not just as a man who faced discrimination, but as a father who refused to be silenced," David began. "This journey showed me the power of truth and the strength of community. It reminded us all that dignity is not a privilege, it is a right." The hotel had followed through on its promises. Their new diversity initiatives were underway, and the scholarship fund had helped several young people from minority backgrounds pursue education in hospitality and business. David had joined a city advisory committee focused on combating discrimination in public spaces. His voice, once ignored, was now heard in boardrooms and council meetings. One afternoon, David received an unexpected invitation. The city's mayor wanted to honor him with a special award for civic courage. Attend the ceremony. David stood proudly beside Michael as the mayor handed him a plaque. "This award recognizes not only your bravery, but your unwavering commitment to justice and equality," the mayor said. David's eyes met Michael's, and they shared a quiet smile, a reminder of how far they had come together. That evening, back home, David tucked Michael into bed. "Dad, do you think things will get better?" David kissed his son's forehead gently. "They will, Michael. Because people like you and me, we keep fighting. And because we know that change begins with standing up for what's right." Michael smiled sleepily. "Good night, Dad. I love you. I love you too, son." As the city slept, David felt a calm resolve. The battle for equality was far from over, but this victory was a powerful step forward, and with each new day, the hope for a fairer, kinder world grew stronger. The end. Thank you for listening to this powerful story. If this touched your heart or opened your eyes, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and always stand up for what's right.